It's my pleasure now to introduce Philippe Cloutier. He's the CEO of Cartier Resources, a company we're very familiar with here at Soar Financial. We've been working with the company for 2.5 years now, I think. And Philippe is going to be talking about the Chimo mine project. So Philippe, please unmute yourself and turn on the camera.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all see the screen. Listen, this is going to be a short version, as Dan and Doug have previously done. I will essentially present what we've accomplished on our flagship project, the Chimo mine project, what we're working on and what we hope to deliver. But I'll also end the presentation with a short discussion on what we aim to do on what we believe is going to be our second flagship. The cautionary statements, as per usual. I will be doing some forward-looking statements throughout this presentation. A very quick snapshot on our capital structure. We have 192 million shares outstanding, 0 warrants. We have a very strong cash position owing to the fact that we are essentially a junior gold explorer. $5.6 million in the bank. Of that, $300,000 remaining for the exploration work towards the end of the year. So we're going to end 2020 with a very strong balance sheet. We also have a very nice share distribution. Agnico Eagle owns 17% of our stock. The Quebec sovereign funds just under 15%. Miriam Global 5.5%. I'm a significant shareholder myself, and we've been tracking the shares traded per day since Agnico's joined as a major shareholders. That is in December 2016, and recently we've gone up to almost 1 million shares per day, but on average for the last 4 years about 200,000 shares per day. Our property locations, just to give you a sense of scale. At the bottom part, I'm going to center my presentation on the Chimo gold mine property, and you could see that that's the Cadillac Fault from Val-d'Or to Rouen. You could see that there's a lot of infrastructure there. It's mine country. We have very nice neighbors that are competent, dynamic, and so it's we're in the right neighborhood. The project is situated sufficiently away from town so as not to, cause any public concern, but sufficiently close to town so that the workers can drive back and forth every day. And then we had 3 other assets, namely the Benoit, the Fenton, and the Wilson project that are, smack in the middle of what we call an emergent mining district that's currently led by Osisko Mining in Kirkland Lake. And I will touch on the Benoit project toward the end of this presentation. Our main accomplishment in the last few years has been growing the resource at our current flagship, which is the Chimo mine project. Chimo mine is a historical producer, past producer. It has produced just under 400,000 ounces from 3 producers from 1960s to 1997. At which point where it was shut down, but remember the price of gold then was about $300 US. We're using in our resource estimate work a price of gold of US $1,300 per ounce and a cutoff of 2.5 grams per ton gold. Our first resource estimate tabled in December 2019 basically demonstrated that we had in the combined indicated and inferred categories about double the amount of historical production at Chimo. Our most recent resource estimate basically delivered 1.2 million ounces of gold, or nearly 3 times what was historically produced at Chimo. And as I hope to demonstrate in this presentation, the work that we're doing right now and that we've recently completed with the diamond drilling, we believe our target will inch us towards 1.7, if not 2 million ounces of gold by the end of the year. Part of our value proposition is that if we measure the enterprise value per ounce at Cartier, we're currently established at about $25 Canadian, whereas our peers recently were evaluated at $55 Canadian per ounce. Because this project has infrastructure with a wealth of information in terms of metallurgy, past production rates, et cetera, well, we think that it's a far cry from $25 per ounce versus what we think the market is paying for those ounces in the vicinity, which is in the range of $100 to $150 Canadian. And so another way of looking at that is if you take our current cash position, you add that to the value of the resource established at May, not even counting what we intend on producing by December, and you multiply that by a lower and an upper range of 100, 150, you could see that our in-situ valuation should have us in a price range of about 60 to 90 cents Canadian per share. But we're trading at 26 cents per share. So therein lies part of the value proposition. The greater part, obviously, is what we intend to deliver by the end of the year. So what we've done at Chimo, basically, since acquisition, is we've compiled, we've interpreted, and we've done nearly 60,000 meters of diamond drilling within a 500-meter radius, laterally and at depth of the current infrastructure, the shaft and the drifts. We've tabled 2 resource estimates that cover the north, the central, and the south gold corridors. And we've initiated some internal engineering studies as well as industrial sorting of the mineralization reviews to just sweeten the pot and come and add to the drilling that we've recently done. And I think that's what's going to get us to 1.7 to 2 million ounces by the end of the year. The resource estimate, up to date as of May 5th, 2020, there's the central, the north, and the southern gold corridors. That's nearly 9 million tons at roughly 4 grams per ton. But let's look at it from on this graphic slide here. The bulk of the production at Chimo was in the central gold corridor, or that central panel with the yellow boxes there. And that was roughly 1.7 million tons. The original production at Chimo was on the northern corridor, which is your top left here, and that was roughly 150,000 tons, grading 14.8 grams per ton. And then the upper part of the central corridor was mined in the mid-80s by Luvem, and they extracted about 500,000 tons at 5 gramish. And then that was bought by Cambior, who then produced until 1997, and they produced the remaining of the tonnage, which, you know, and they operated at a head grade of 3.8 grams per ton gold. So you can see that although the grade at Chimo appears low, it is the part that generates the most ounces, as you'll see in the next slide. This is what the rock looks like at Chimo. Most mines along the Cadillac and that produce impressive grades is that quartz veining. And that will give you 20, 30, or 40 grams per ton over, you know, submetric to metric widths. What was discovered at Chimo is that the host rock affects a large volume of rock at a relatively constant grade. And when you take all of that, well, that produces over 75% of the gold at Chimo, whereas the quartz veining in Stockworks produce about 25% of the gold. That's important to consider because it will impact on the engineering and the mineralization sorting test that we've conducted. So what we launched in parallel to the drilling that we've recently completed was 3 basic engineering projects. A first project to determine the stope configuration that allows for the optimal recuperation of the resource. A second project that was completed with positive results. It was to determine the maximum hoisting capacity from the existing shaft and the other underground infrastructures, the drifts that go out to the north in the central zone and in the southern. And then a third project, which is what we call the production capacity, or to design a mining schedule to feed the maximum hoisting rate at surface. As you can see there, these are three distinct moving parts, and when you and you have to play around with these in order to reduce your production costs and to to produce the optimal amount of gold ounces. Of the second approach that we've done, obviously, because of the rock sample I showed you, was to run a sizable sample with Steinart and their ore sorting facility in the States. Unfortunately, we ran it right through COVID, so there were some delays. But we've recently returned, we had the results, and that project was as well completed with positive conclusions. So what that means is once you haul that 4-gram material at surface and a sizable tonnage of that, you're able to take the initial grade and double that through a sorting process, and also take the initial tonnage and half that. And that will impact on the transportation costs of the milling and the restoration. So not only are we doing work in order to establish the inventory of gold ounces at Chimo, but we're also looking at the engineering aspects in order to tag a value on those ounces. Remember that the Chimo project does have infrastructure. It has the production reports and known metallurgy. So it has a step. It's a step ahead of most projects, and we believe it's got one of the shortest lead time to productions for a mining project along the Cadillac Fault. So when that is done, and while it's being done, we're attending to other business. We have 3 other gold deposits, as I mentioned earlier on. They're situated in the emerging mining district that is held by Cisco and Kirkland Lake. And the next project we're going to tackle is the Benoit project. It's got a historical resource estimate on it of about 500,000 tons, grading 5 grams per ton gold, 12 grams per ton silver, and 0.3% copper. That is within a geological resource, so that's what they called it at the time, of about 4.6 million tons of 2-gram material from 0 to about 250 meter depth. So the work in progress there is an internal study of the mineralization that will lead to a resource estimate and will essentially guide and jumpstart a drill program on that project. So the deliverables on Chimo is additional drill results, resource estimates, and engineering, as well as the individual engineering chapters that we're working on, and then ultimately perhaps reports and resource estimate on the Benoit project. I believe I'm well within my time there, Kai.